If your net worth is $100,000, you are in the top 20% of every adult on this planet. Not the top 20% of Americans, every adult on Earth. And if it's $1 million, you are in the top 1.1% of all 8 billion humans alive right now. The signs I'm about to walk through aren't motivational, they're mathematical. And some of them are going to force you to recalculate your entire sense of where you stand. 90% of Americans reported some form of financial stress entering 2026, according to the National Endowment for Financial Education. 88%. And simultaneously, the median American net worth just hit a historic record high. 69% of Americans told WalletHub they feel financially insecure. And simultaneously, American homeowners collectively hold $34 trillion in home equity, up 88% since 2019. A survey by Northwestern Mutual found that nearly 7 in 10 Americans say financial uncertainty has led them to feelings of anxiety and depression. And simultaneously, if you earn $50,000 a year in the United States, you are, by global income data, in the top 1% of earners on this planet. Something in that picture doesn't add up. And the gap between what people feel and what the data actually shows is probably the most expensive miscalculation most people will ever make. Because someone who thinks they're starting from zero makes radically different decisions than someone who realizes they're already 40 yards down the field. And that difference in behavior compounds over 30 years into results that would genuinely shock you. Here's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to show you 5 specific data-backed signs that you are already wealthier than you know. Not in a fluffy, everything is fine way. In a Federal Reserve data, global context, hard numbers way. And I'm going to explain the psychological mechanism behind why smart, financially aware people miss this completely. Because this isn't about making you feel good. It's about making you make better decisions. Feeling poor when you're not is not just an emotional inconvenience. It is an active financial liability. Every business produces 2 financial documents. There's the income statement, cash in, cash out, what came in this month, what went out. And there's the balance sheet, what you own, what you owe, and what's left over when you subtract one from the other. Most people run their entire financial lives staring exclusively at the income statement. Paycheck comes in, mortgage goes out, car payment goes out, the grocery bill that somehow keeps going up goes out. And whatever's left, which in 2026, with these prices, is probably not much, that's the number you stare at and use to evaluate your financial health. If that number feels thin, you conclude you're not doing well. If it goes negative, some months, you conclude you're behind. You never look up from that document. But here's the structural problem. A business that runs cash flow negative every single month can still be worth tens of millions of dollars on its balance sheet. Startups do this deliberately for years. Their income statement would terrify you. Their balance sheet is why investors keep funding them. The income statement and the balance sheet tell completely different stories about the same company's financial reality. Most people have never actually read their own balance sheet, and I mean that literally. Never sat down with a piece of paper, written down every asset, written down every liability, subtracted one from the other, and then compared that resulting number to actual population data. This whole video is about the balance sheet you never read. And I'm going to come back to that phrase because every sign we go through is another line item you forgot to put on it. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the single most disorienting wealth comparison in this entire video, the one that reframes everything. But first, let me tell you about the asset hiding in plain sight on your balance sheet that most people actively discount, even people who know it exists. The average American homeowner right now is sitting on $295,000 in home equity. That's from Cotality's data published in early 2026. $295,000. You know how long it takes the typical American worker to accumulate $295,000 in savings? A very long time. For most people, we're talking a decade or more of aggressive saving after taxes. And yet there is a substantial portion of American homeowners who, if you ask them how much they're worth, would answer with their checking account balance. Who would describe themselves as broke because they're $43 in the black after bills cleared on Thursday. They have an asset the size of a down payment on a yacht sitting in their property and they never put it on the balance sheet. Think about what that categorization error actually means in practice. Someone has a $300,000 asset larger than the median American retirement account, and they're genuinely convinced they're losing. Here's the actual data. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth of homeowners is $396,200. The median net worth of renters is $10,400. That is a 38-to-1 difference. Homeowners don't earn dramatically more money on average. They accumulate wealth through a forced savings mechanism built into every mortgage payment, accelerated by a market that has appreciated at an average rate of 4.3% per year from 1994 through 2023, according to CoreLogic and FHFA data. You didn't have to be smart. You didn't have to be disciplined with your budget. You had to own the thing. The thing did the work. Here is a story that lands this better than any statistic. There's a man, let's call him Marcus, who for 15 years complained that he was not a money person. He'd say it at dinner. He'd say it when the check came. He had a running internal narrative about his relationship with money, and it was entirely negative. In 2012, when everyone thought the housing market was still radioactive from the crisis, he bought a house in Phoenix for $140,000. He wasn't making a real estate investment. He needed somewhere to live, and renting felt like lighting money on fire. He bought it, moved in, stopped thinking about it as a financial asset, and for 15 years made his monthly payment on autopilot. In 2024, a neighbor sold a house 2 doors down for $410,000. Marcus had about $70,000 left on his mortgage. His balance sheet, which he had never looked at, had $340,000 in equity. He had been, by any reasonable definition, a wealthy man for years. He just hadn't done the math. His income statement said stressed. His balance sheet said something completely different. Now here's the thing that's worth pressing on. There's an uncomfortable flip side to this, and this is where it gets really interesting. Home equity for the median American homeowner makes up somewhere between 59 and 73% of their total net worth, according to Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances data. In other words, the house is the whole show, which means the balance sheet looks strong, but is largely illiquid. You cannot spend home equity. You cannot put it in the market on a Tuesday. It's locked in a building that requires maintenance and insurance and property taxes. The house got you to a significant starting position, but converting that position into actual financial flexibility requires another conversation entirely. And that is the conversation most people are not having because they don't even know they're in a position to have it. And speaking of assets that work while you're not looking, stay with me, because what comes next is the section most people have a genuine, unexpected reaction to. I'm serious about this. I've talked to a lot of people about personal finance. This one lands differently. There's a question I want you to sit with. When you imagine wealthy, what face appears in your head? Is it your boss? Someone from television? A neighbor with a nicer car? It's almost certainly someone in your direct social orbit, someone you can see, someone you're constantly, subconsciously measuring yourself against. That is the entire problem. Here's the actual population you should be comparing yourself to. 8 billion people. According to data built from the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report and corroborated by multiple research tools tracking global wealth distribution, roughly half of all adults on this planet have less than $10,000 in net worth. Half. The global median net worth is approximately $10,000. If your net worth exceeds $10,000 in total assets minus liabilities, and that's not a lot of assets, you are in the top half of all humans alive on Earth right now. If your net worth reaches $100,000, and that includes your car, your home equity, your retirement account, your savings, you enter the top 20% globally. $1 million in net worth places you in the top 1.1% of all adults worldwide. Approximately 60 million people out of 8 billion. Now, I know what you're about to say. Tom, that's comparing me to people in countries with entirely different costs of living. That's not a fair comparison. And you're partially right. Purchasing power matters. Cost of living is real. That framing is imperfect, and I'll acknowledge that freely. But here's what is not imperfect at all. the psychological mechanism. The reason most Americans feel economically inadequate is not because they are by any reasonable standard. It's because human beings are hardwired, to evaluate their situation through social comparison. Your neighbors, your LinkedIn feed, your coworker who just announced they're buying a vacation home, your brother-in-law and his boat. This is called social comparison theory, and it is one of the most expensive cognitive biases any of us will ever run into because unlike most biases, this one has a direct, calculable cost. Here's where the data gets genuinely uncomfortable. According to Charles Schwab's 2024 Modern Wealth Survey, Americans said it takes a net worth of $2.5 million to be considered wealthy. That's the number people carry in their heads, 2.5 million. And that benchmark has been climbing 2.2 million in 2022, 2.3 million last year, 2.5 the year after that. The bar keeps moving up. But to actually be in the top 10% of Americans by net worth in 2025, you need $970,900 per Federal Reserve and analytical data. Under 1 million. To be in the top 5%, you need approximately 1.17 million. So the average American believes wealthy starts at 2.5 million. The statistical top 5% begins at 1.17 million. There's a gap there. A $1.3 million gap between what people believe and what the numbers show. And that gap has a creator. The financial media ecosystem needs you to feel inadequate. That's not a conspiracy. That's an incentive structure. You click when you're anxious. You trade when you're afraid. You subscribe to premium services when you feel behind. Financial anxiety is not a byproduct of financial media. It is the product. I spent 10 plus years around accountants and fiscal lawyers. And the thing that struck me most was how differently they related to money than civilians did. The people who actually understood the numbers were generally calm. The people who processed their financial lives through headlines were generally stressed. Anxiety, in many financial cases, is a product of the reference frame, not the underlying reality. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. I put this kind of data-backed analysis out regularly, and it tends to get buried if you don't. Here's what that anxiety costs concretely. A person who believes they're far behind their peers tends to engage in one of two behaviors. Either they save nothing because it feels pointless, or they take on excessive risk trying to close a gap that doesn't actually exist. Neither of those behaviors is rational. Both produce outcomes that are worse than the basic, boring, index fund and weight approach that the data has supported for decades. You think the problem is your income. Actually, the problem is the comparison set you're using to evaluate your income. Here's the part that never makes it into the retirement calculator you've been staring at. Knowing these numbers, understanding where you actually stand globally, understanding that your home equity is a real asset, that your compounding retirement account is working while you sleep, none of that matters until you have a system that converts this awareness into an actual plan with a specific date and a specific exit number. Knowing the scoreboard and knowing how to win the game are two different competencies. I had access to this data years before I did anything systematic with it. The knowledge didn't change my behavior. The framework did, which is why I built something called the Exit Code. It's an 8-chapter digital book built on 50 years of actual retirement data. Not opinion, not motivational writing, but mathematical frameworks distilled from half a century of research into what actually works. I built it because I got tired of watching smart people with real assets make the same avoidable mistakes at the exact worst moments. Two things in it connect directly to what I've covered today. First, there's what I call the 4% trap the withdrawal rate rule that Wall Street still hands out like gospel, and the dynamic withdrawal method that replaces it with something significantly more resilient across the kinds of market sequences we've seen between 2022 and 2026. Second, there's the 58%. Rule a statistic about how many Americans are forced out of the workforce before their planned retirement date, and the specific buffer strategy you need to build against that scenario. If you're between 40 and 55 years old watching this, that number is directly relevant to your situation. The whole thing is available for less than a dinner out through the link in the description. Now, back to the balance sheet. There's a line item most people forget to count, and it might be the most structurally important one. If you have a 401k or an IRA, even a modest one, you are probably not counting it correctly. Here's what I mean. Let's say you're 40 years old. You have $150,000 in a 401k. You check the balance and you think, I'm 40, I only have $150,000. I'm behind. That's the income statement telling you a story. Here's the balance sheet calculation. The S&P 500 has delivered an average annual return of roughly 10% since its inception in 1957. As of December 2025, Fidelity data confirms the 40-year average annual return sits at 11.5%. At 10% annualized growth, $150,000 over 25 years with zero additional contributions becomes approximately $1.6 million. Run the math. $150,000 times the 25-year compounding factor at 10%. You're looking at a number in the range of $1.6 to $1.8 million with no additional contributions. That's what's already on your balance sheet if you just leave it alone and stop checking it during corrections. Now, here is the devastating counterpart to that. According to Dalbar's quantitative analysis of investor behavior, one of the most cited studies in behavioral finance, the average U.S. equity fund investor over a 30-year span from 1993 through 2022 returned 6.81% annually, underperforming the S&P 500 by 2.81% per year. On a starting value of $100,000 over 30 years, that gap in annual return translates to a difference of $864,000 in final value. $864,000, not lost to fees, lost to behavior, selling during downturns, chasing last year's top performer, moving into cash when the headlines got scary. A separate JP Morgan study found that the average retail investor returned just 2.9% annually over a 20-year period. The market did 10. The gap between those two numbers over a career is the gap between a meaningful retirement and a difficult one. You think the problem is that you don't earn enough to invest enough. Actually, the problem is that the average investor earns less than a third of what the market provides because they keep interfering with their own compounding. The 401k is one of the most powerful wealth building tools ever created for ordinary people. In 2025, the participation rate among employees with access to one is 91%, a historical record, per the December 2025 report from that sector. That's genuinely good news. But showing up to the game and playing it terribly still produces bad outcomes. The participation rate metric doesn't measure behavior, it measures presence. There's a subplot I want to introduce here because it runs through the rest of this video. I've been talking about the balance sheet, the visible one, the one with your house and your brokerage account and your savings. But there's a class of asset that doesn't appear on any traditional personal finance balance sheet. And most people have never tried to put a number on it. I'm going to call it the invisible balance sheet. By the end of this video, I'm going to add 2 line items to it that most people have genuinely never accounted for. And when they run those numbers, the total picture shifts substantially. Let me set the stage for sign 4 and sign 5 with one of the more underappreciated data points in personal finance. The average Social Security retired worker benefit in 2025 is approximately $1,907 per month per the Social Security Administration. For someone claiming at full retirement age, 67 for most people in this audience, and living to 85, that's 18 years of benefits. $1,907 times 12 months times 18 years equals approximately $411,000 in lifetime payments. In today's dollars, now here is the reframe that matters. If you walked into an insurance company and asked them to create a private annuity, a product that pays you $1,907 per month, inflation adjusted, starting at 67 and lasting for the rest of your life, they would charge you somewhere in the range of $350,000 to $450,000 for that contract, depending on current interest rates. You already own that contract. You've been paying into it your entire working life. It does not appear on your balance sheet because there is no account statement for it, no quarterly report, no ticker symbol. It just exists in the background, accumulating while you focus on the checking account. But it is real. It is yours. And if you're married, your spouse may have one too. That's potentially $700,000 to $900,000 in lifetime annuity value for a household. A number that simply never appears in how most people think about their financial position. The second item on the invisible balance sheet is your human capital. Your ability to continue earning income. Let's say you're 38 years old and you earn $85,000 a year. You plan to work until 65. That's 27 more years of income. 27 times 85,000 is $2.3 million in future gross earnings. Before any raises, before any promotions, before any career pivots, your human capital is a multi-million-dollar asset. And most people count $0 of it when they sit down and try to assess their financial position. A financial advisor once explained to me that the reason young people catastrophically underestimate their wealth is that they exclusively count what they've already accumulated and completely ignore the enormous asset they generate simply by continuing to show up to work. You are not a $40,000 balance sheet. You are a $40,000 balance sheet plus $2 million in future income generating capacity. Those are two completely different starting points. Here's why all of this matters at the level of behavior. There's documented evidence, and I've seen it up close, that people who believe they are significantly behind their peers make systematically different financial decisions from people who believe they're on track. Not just psychological decisions, actual financial ones. They take higher risks trying to close an imaginary gap. They delay contributing to retirement accounts because it feels pointless given how far behind they think they are. They hold cash because investing feels like throwing money at a problem that's already too big to fix. All of these behaviors have a direct, calculable cost over a 30-year horizon. You think the problem is your savings rate. Actually, the problem is the story you've attached to a number you've never accurately calculated. Let me make this concrete. Meet David, 44 years old, lives in a mid-sized city in Texas, bought his house in 2015 for $220,000. Current market value, based on comparable sales in his neighborhood, roughly $380,000. Outstanding mortgage, $112,000. Home equity, $268,000. David has a 401k with $90,000 in it. He has a rollover IRA from a job he left in 2019 with $35,000 in it. He has about $22,000 in a savings account. His car loan has $14,000 remaining. Total assets, approximately $415,000. Total liabilities, $126,000. Net worth, approximately $289,000. David genuinely believes he's behind. He makes $68,000 a year with his wife's income mixed in. It never quite feels like enough, and he's 44, and he keeps seeing articles about how he should have 3 times his salary saved by now, and he's looking at $90,000 in his 401k and doing the arithmetic. And it does not look like 3 times 68,000, but here's what the data says about David. The median net worth for Americans ages 45 to 54, according to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, is $247,000. David is above the median for his age bracket. He is in better financial shape than more than half of all Americans within 5 years of his age. Globally, $289,000 in net worth puts him comfortably in the top 3 to 5% of all adults on Earth. Now here's the part David definitely hasn't calculated. His 401k has $90,000 in it at age 44. He has 21 years until 65. At 10% historical average compounding, that $90,000 becomes approximately $647,000 by the time he reaches retirement age, with 0 additional contributions. If he contributes even $10,000 a year over that same period at 10%, the math on the combined result is substantially larger. Add in the IRA, then add his projected Social Security benefit. For someone at his income level, the SSA would estimate a full retirement age benefit somewhere around $1,900 to $2,100 per month. Over a 20-year retirement, that's a lifetime annuity value approaching $450,000 to $500,000. David's actual financial position, properly measured, projected, and counted, is dramatically better than what he sees when he checks his bank account on a Thursday morning. He's not independently wealthy, but he is not starting from nothing. He never was. He was just using the wrong document to evaluate his situation. Let me also be honest about something for 1 second, because fair is fair. I can already hear some of you working through the counter argument. Tom, my balance sheet has real problems. I have credit card debt at 22%. I have no equity in my house because I bought last year. My 401k has almost nothing in it because I spent most of my 30s not contributing. That's a valid objection, and I'm not dismissing it. Some people's balance sheets genuinely need urgent work. The point of this video is not to declare everyone fine regardless of the evidence. The point is, most people have never actually run the calculation. Most people don't know what their net worth is. They navigate their financial life by how the checking account feels, which is the least accurate possible instrument for evaluating your real financial position. If you run the numbers and the result is uncomfortable, good. Now you have an accurate problem statement instead of an anxiety-driven narrative. That's more useful. But there's a meaningful percentage of people watching this video who will run those numbers and discover that the actual problem is smaller or the actual position is stronger than they've been telling themselves. For years, financial anxiety is not always proportional to financial reality. That gap, where it exists, is worth closing. Let me close out the invisible balance sheet. Line item 1, your home equity. If you own a home, the average American homeowner holds approximately $295,000 in equity right now. Look up your home's estimated current value, subtract what you owe on the mortgage, write that number down. Line item 2, your retirement account's projected value. Take what you have today, apply 10% compounding, count the years to your expected retirement date. Use any free compound interest calculator. The number you're looking at is not $90,000. It's what $90,000 becomes after 2 decades of compounding. That number belongs on your balance sheet. Line item 3, your Social Security claim. The SSA provides a free estimator at ssa.gov. Run your projection. For a median earner collecting at full retirement age and living to 85, you're looking at lifetime benefits in the range of $300,000 to $450,000 in today's purchasing power. That's a real asset. Write it down. Line item 4, your human capital. If you're under 50 and still working, your future earnings are an asset. If you earn $80,000 a year and have 20 years left in your career, you have a $1.6 million income generating asset. Put a number on it. Add those 4 lines. Add your liquid savings. Subtract all liabilities. Then compare that total to the Federal Reserve median for your age bracket. That calculation is the most honest financial self-assessment most people have never completed. And I will bet, conservatively, that the result is more surprising than the one they've been carrying in their head. 3 practical takeaways, specific to exactly what we covered today. First, run your actual balance sheet in the next 48 hours. Not your budget, not your monthly cash flow, your balance sheet. Assets minus liabilities. Then go to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finance's data, publicly available, and look up the median net worth for your age bracket. If you're above the median, you are statistically ahead of most Americans your age. If you're below it, now you have an accurate problem, not a vague anxiety. Either outcome is more useful than not knowing. Second, replace your social comparison set with statistical data. Your highest earning colleagues are not representative of the population. Comparing your balance sheet to the wealthiest people in your professional network is like evaluating your fitness by comparing yourself to marathon elites. The correct benchmarks are Federal Reserve percentile data and global wealth distribution numbers. Those are the populations you're actually in. Third, calculate the projected value of your retirement account, not just its current balance. The current balance is what you have. The projected value is what's already becoming something else while you're focused on this month. Run it at 10% over your remaining years. Then factor in continued contributions. That projected number is your honest balance sheet figure, not the current statement. Here's where we started. 90% of Americans reported financial stress entering 2026. Simultaneously, American homeowners hold $34 trillion in equity. 69% feel financially insecure. Simultaneously, median American net worth is at a record high. Both sets of data are real. Both are happening at the same time. And the reason they can coexist is that stress is not a balance sheet calculation. Stress is a comparison. And we have built an information environment, social media, financial advertising, the entire architecture of financial media that guarantees you will always find someone doing better than you, always find a benchmark you haven't cleared, always find a reason to feel behind. The balance sheet you never read is telling you a different story. Maybe it's time to actually read it. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And the compounding clock didn't wait for you to feel ready. It's been running either way.